In the early hours of March 3, 1991, a young African-American man named Rodney King was driving home after spending time with friends. It was supposed to be just another ordinary night for him, but fate had other plans. Rodney wasn't someone who stood out in a crowd. He lived a simple life working as a construction worker and trying to make ends meet. But on this particular evening, his choices would lead to an event that shook not only Los Angeles but the entire country. Rodney had been drinking at a friend's house, celebrating nothing special, just enjoying some laughs and good company. As midnight approached, he decided it was time to head home. Knowing he'd had too much to drink, he thought twice about letting someone else drive. However, none of his friends were sober enough either. So, against his better judgment, Rodney got behind the wheel of his white Hyundai Excel and started the short journey back to his apartment. The roads were quiet, and the cool California breeze brushed past trees lining the streets. For a while, everything seemed normal. But then Rodney made a mistake. He began speeding. Maybe it was because he wanted to get home quickly, or maybe he underestimated how fast he was going. Whatever the reason, his speed caught the attention of two California Highway Patrol officers patrolling nearby. When they saw his car swerving between lanes, they immediately turned on their flashing lights and sirens, signaling him to pull over. At first, Rodney panicked. He knew he shouldn't have been driving, and now, with police cars chasing him, fear took control. Instead of stopping right away, he kept going, hoping to find a safe place where he could explain himself. The chase lasted several minutes, weaving through residential neighborhoods until Rodney finally realized there was no escape. With nowhere left to run, he pulled over near a park in Lakeview Terrace, a quiet area surrounded by homes and dimly lit streets. His heart raced as he stepped out of the car, unsure of what was about to happen next. What Rodney didn't know was that this moment would become one of the most infamous events in American history. Little did he realize that his actions, and the actions of others, would spark a chain reaction leading to nationwide outrage and change. This seemingly routine traffic stop transformed into something far more sinister, exposing deep-rooted issues within society and law enforcement. As Rodney stood outside his car under the glow of streetlights, multiple police cruisers arrived on the scene. Among them were 4 LAPD officers: Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, Theodore Brazino, and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn. They approached Rodney cautiously, ordering him to lie face down on the ground. But Rodney hesitated. He later said he feared being shot if he complied, a fear rooted in years of hearing stories about police violence against black men. His hesitation angered the officers, and things quickly spiraled out of control. Before Rodney could fully process what was happening, the officers unleashed a brutal attack. Baton swung wildly, striking every part of his body: his arms, legs, back, and even his head. Kicks followed, delivered with such force that Rodney screamed in pain, begging for mercy. Yet his cries fell on deaf ears. The beating continued, relentlessly, lasting more than 15 minutes. Each strike echoed through the stillness of the night, a grim reminder of the power imbalance between those sworn to protect and those they deemed suspicious. Unbeknownst to everyone present, including Rodney, a neighbor named George Holliday was watching from his apartment balcony. From his vantage point, Holliday could see exactly what was unfolding below. Shocked by the level of violence, he grabbed his camcorder and began recording. What he captured was raw and unfiltered, a horrifying display of brutality that would, soon, grip the nation. The footage showed Rodney writhing in agony, unable to defend himself against the overwhelming force being used against him. Holliday didn't know what to do with the video at first. After all, witnessing something so shocking left him feeling uneasy. Eventually, he decided to share it with local news stations, believing it was important for people to see what really happened. Once the tape aired, it spread like wildfire, sparking outrage across the country. For many, especially African Americans, the images were hauntingly familiar. The video confirmed what they had long suspected. Systemic racism and excessive force were alive and well within law enforcement agencies. The sight of Rodney King being beaten senseless struck a nerve with millions of viewers. Protests erupted, almost immediately, demanding accountability for the officers involved. People from all walks of life joined together, calling for justice and reform. The incident forced Americans to confront uncomfortable truths about race relations and policing practices. It also highlighted the growing distrust between communities of color and law enforcement, a divide that had existed for decades but rarely received widespread attention. For Rodney, the aftermath of that night was anything but ordinary. Overnight, he became a symbol of injustice, a reluctant figurehead for a movement advocating for equality and fairness. Despite the public scrutiny and media frenzy surrounding him, Rodney struggled to cope with the trauma of what he endured. Physically, he suffered broken bones, bruises, and permanent scars. Emotionally, however, the wounds ran deeper. He often felt overwhelmed by the weight of his newfound fame and the expectations placed upon him. Even as protests raged and debates filled headlines, Rodney tried to focus on healing. Friends and family rallied around him, offering support during difficult times. Still, the road to recovery was long and fraught with challenges. Substance abuse became a recurring issue, partly due to the stress and anxiety stemming from his ordeal. Financial troubles added another layer of difficulty, leaving him struggling to rebuild his life piece by piece. Despite these hardships, Rodney remained hopeful. He believed that sharing his story could help prevent similar incidents from happening to others. In interviews, he spoke candidly about his experiences, urging people to come together despite their differences. His famous plea, "Can we all get along?" resonated deeply, capturing the essence of unity amidst division. Though Rodney faced countless obstacles, he never lost sight of the bigger picture, a world where everyone is treated equally, regardless of race or background. Though Rodney King passed away in 2012, his legacy lives on. The tragic events of that night continue to serve as a powerful reminder of the work still needed to achieve true justice and equality. Today, activists honor his memory by pushing for reforms aimed at addressing systemic issues within law enforcement. While progress has been slow, Rodney's story remains a beacon of hope, inspiring generations to keep fighting for a brighter future. The night of March 3, 1991, had already turned into a nightmare for Rodney King. After pulling over near Lakeview Terrace, he stepped out of his car, hoping to explain himself to the officers who now surrounded him. But instead of calm communication or understanding, Rodney found himself face-to-face with hostility and aggression. The 4 LAPD officers, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, Theodore Brazino, and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, approached him with an air of authority that quickly turned violent. They ordered him to lie face down on the ground, but Rodney hesitated, unsure of what might happen if he complied. Rodney's hesitation came from fear, a deep-seated fear shared by many African Americans when interacting with law enforcement. He later recounted how he believed lying down would make him appear vulnerable, possibly provoking the officers to shoot him. Instead, he tried to reassure them, raising his hands in surrender and saying, "Please don't shoot me." His words fell on deaf ears. The officers interpreted his reluctance as defiance, and their response was swift and brutal. Within moments, Rodney was struck with a taser gun, sending electric shocks coursing through his body. The jolt momentarily paralyzed him, but it didn't stop the officers. Lawrence Powell grabbed his baton and began swinging violently, landing blow after blow on Rodney's head and torso. Timothy Wind joined in, delivering kicks and strikes with frightening precision. Even Sergeant Kuhn, who was supposed to oversee the situation, stood by without intervening, allowing the beating to escalate further. Theodore Brazino initially seemed hesitant but eventually participated as well, though less aggressively than the others. For more than 15 minutes, Rodney endured unimaginable pain. Each strike echoed through the quiet neighborhood, punctuated by his desperate screams for mercy. "Stop! Please stop!" he cried repeatedly, his voice trembling with agony. Yet the officers showed no sign of restraint. Their actions were relentless, fueled by anger rather than reason. At one point, Rodney collapsed onto the pavement, unable to defend himself against the barrage of blows raining down on him. Bloodied and broken, He curled into a fetal position, trying desperately to shield his face and vital organs from the onslaught. Unbeknownst to everyone involved, George Holliday, a resident living nearby, was filming the entire incident from his apartment balcony. Armed with a camcorder, Holliday captured footage that would soon shock the world. From his vantage point, he recorded every horrifying detail: the baton strikes, the kicks, and Rodney's anguished cries. The video clearly showed the disproportionate violence inflicted upon a man who posed no threat. Holliday couldn't believe what he was witnessing. Like many others, he had heard stories about police brutality, but seeing it unfold before his eyes left him stunned. After the beating ended, Holliday knew he had something important on his hands. The next morning, he contacted local news stations, hoping they would broadcast the footage. Initially, there was skepticism. Some producers doubted whether anyone would care about yet another case of alleged misconduct. But when the tape aired, its impact was immediate and overwhelming. Viewers across Los Angeles and soon the entire nation were horrified by what they saw. The video provided undeniable proof of excessive force, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths about racism and inequality within law enforcement. For African Americans, the images were painfully familiar. Many had experienced or witnessed similar incidents firsthand, often dismissed as isolated cases or exaggerated claims. But this time, there was no denying the reality. The video validated their experiences, exposing the systemic issues plaguing policing practices. It also ignited outrage among allies from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, who demanded accountability for the officers responsible. Protests erupted almost instantly, with demonstrators calling for justice not only for Rodney King but for countless others who had suffered silently under oppressive systems. The public reaction was swift and powerful. Community leaders organized rallies and marches, drawing attention to the broader issue of police brutality. Activists took to the streets, holding signs that read, "No justice, no peace," and chanting slogans like, "We want answers." The energy was palpable, driven by a collective desire for change. People from all walks of life joined together, united by a shared goal: to hold those in power accountable and ensure that such atrocities never happened again. However, not everyone supported the outcry. Some defended the officers, arguing that Rodney's refusal to comply justified their actions. Others claimed the media sensationalized the incident, painting the police in an unfairly negative light. These conflicting viewpoints highlighted the deep divisions within society, particularly along racial lines. While some saw the video as evidence of systemic racism, others viewed it as an anomaly, an unfortunate but isolated event. Despite the backlash, the momentum continued to build. Civil rights organizations played a crucial role in amplifying the message, using platforms like television interviews, press conferences, and grassroots campaigns to keep the conversation alive. Prominent figures, including Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, spoke out against the injustice, urging citizens to remain vigilant and persistent in their fight for reform. Their efforts helped galvanize support, turning what could have been a fleeting moment of outrage into a sustained movement for change. Meanwhile, Rodney King struggled to process the aftermath of that traumatic night. Physically, he suffered severe injuries, including multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and permanent scars. Doctors worked tirelessly to patch him up, but the emotional toll was far harder to mend. Nightmares plagued him, replaying the events over and over in vivid detail. He avoided mirrors, unable to look at the bruises marring his face and body. Friends and family rallied around him, offering whatever support they could. But Rodney felt overwhelmed by the weight of public attention. As protests intensified, Rodney became a reluctant symbol of resilience. Reporters hounded him for interviews, eager to hear his side of the story. Though he wanted to stay out of the spotlight, he understood the importance of speaking up. In one interview, he expressed hope that his experience might lead to meaningful change. "I just want people to know I'm human," he said softly, his voice tinged with sadness. "I made a mistake, but nobody deserves to be treated like that." Rodney's humility resonated with many, reinforcing the idea that his struggle represented something larger than himself. His case wasn't just about one man. It was about dismantling a system that perpetuated inequality and injustice. For millions of viewers, the video of his beating served as a wake-up call, forcing them to examine their own biases and assumptions. It sparked conversations about race, privilege, and accountability, challenging individuals and institutions alike to do better. As the weeks passed, calls for justice grew louder. Pressure mounted on authorities to take action against the officers involved. Eventually, charges were filed, setting the stage for a trial that would captivate the nation. Meanwhile, Rodney tried to focus on healing, leaning on loved ones for strength. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, he clung to the belief that his suffering could inspire positive change. Little did he know, however, that the verdict would spark even greater turmoil, testing the limits of hope and patience for communities yearning for fairness and equality. The story of Rodney King was far from over. What started as a routine traffic stop had spiraled into a national reckoning, laying bare the cracks in America's foundation. And while the outcome of the trial loomed large, one thing was clear. The events of that fateful night had forever altered the course of history, leaving an indelible mark on generations to come. The trial of the 4 LAPD officers involved in the beating of Rodney King began months after the incident, and by then, the nation was already divided. The case had become a symbol of everything wrong with policing and racial injustice in America. People across the country followed every detail closely, hoping for accountability and justice. For many African Americans, this trial wasn't just about Rodney King. It represented decades of mistreatment at the hands of law enforcement. The courtroom proceedings were broadcast live on television, turning what should have been a local matter into a national spectacle. The prosecution argued that the officers had used excessive and unnecessary force against Rodney King, emphasizing how their actions violated his civil rights. They presented evidence, including George Holliday's now infamous video, which showed the brutal beating in graphic detail. Prosecutors described how Rodney had been unarmed, outnumbered, and defenseless, yet the officers continued to strike him mercilessly. Witnesses testified about the horror they felt watching the attack unfold, while medical experts explained the extent of Rodney's injuries, broken bones, internal damage, and deep psychological trauma. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of police misconduct. On the other side, the defense team worked tirelessly to justify the officers' behavior. They claimed that Rodney's refusal to comply with commands left them no choice but to use force. They argued that he posed a threat because of his size and strength, despite the fact that he never fought back or resisted arrest once stopped. To bolster their case, the defense dissected the video frame by frame, attempting to downplay the severity of the beating. They also highlighted Rodney's prior criminal record, suggesting it somehow made him deserving of harsh treatment. This tactic angered many observers, who saw it as an attempt to shift blame onto the victim, rather than address the officer's misconduct. Throughout the trial, tensions simmered both inside and outside the courtroom. Protesters gathered daily, outside the courthouse, holding signs and chanting slogans like "Justice for Rodney" and "No more police brutality." Their voices echoed through the streets, drawing attention not only to Rodney's case but also to countless other incidents where Black individuals had suffered similar fates. Inside, emotions ran high as lawyers debated fiercely, witnesses recounted harrowing details, and jurors listened intently. Every day brought new developments, keeping the public glued to their televisions and newspapers. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments wrapped up, and the jury retired to deliberate. Comprised of 10 white members, 1 Latino, and 1 Asian American, the panel faced immense pressure to deliver a fair verdict. Many believed the video provided irrefutable proof of wrongdoing, leaving little room for doubt. Yet the deliberations dragged on for days, fueling anxiety among those awaiting the outcome. Would justice prevail, or would the system fail yet again? Finally, on April 29, 1992, the verdict was announced. As news anchors prepared to break the story, millions tuned in, bracing themselves for what might come next. When the decision came down, shockwaves rippled across the nation. 3 of the officers, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, and Theodore, Briseno, were acquitted of all charges. Sergeant Stacy Coon's case ended in a hung jury, meaning no verdict could be reached. The announcement sparked immediate outrage. For many, the acquittals felt like a slap in the face, a clear indication that the justice system valued the word of police officers over undeniable video evidence. Within hours, anger boiled over into chaos. South Central Los Angeles, already plagued by poverty and neglect, became ground zero for widespread protests that quickly escalated into riots. Buildings burned, cars were overturned, and businesses were looted as frustration poured out onto the streets. Smoke filled the air, sirens wailed nonstop, and clashes erupted between civilians and law enforcement. The riots lasted 6 days, leaving 63 people dead, thousands injured, and hundreds of millions of dollars in property damage. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble, underscoring the depth of despair felt by communities long ignored and oppressed. For Rodney King himself, the verdict was devastating. He had hoped the trial would bring closure, allowing him to move forward with his life. Instead, he found himself thrust back into the spotlight, forced to watch as his name became synonymous with tragedy. In interviews during the riots, Rodney pleaded for peace, famously asking, "Can we all get along?" His words resonated deeply, capturing the pain and exhaustion of a man caught in forces far beyond his control. Despite everything he had endured, Rodney still believed in humanity's capacity for compassion and understanding. As the riots raged, leaders from various backgrounds scrambled to restore order. President George H.W. Bush addressed the nation, condemning the violence while acknowledging the underlying issues that fueled it. Local officials imposed curfews and deployed National Guard troops to quell the unrest. Meanwhile, community organizers worked tirelessly to bridge divides, urging calm and dialogue. Though the immediate crisis eventually subsided, its impact lingered, leaving scars on the city and its residents. In the aftermath, federal prosecutors decided to pursue a second trial against the officers, this time under civil rights charges. Unlike the first trial, which took place in Simi Valley, a predominantly white suburb, the retrial occurred in Los Angeles, ensuring a more diverse jury pool. Once again, the prosecution relied heavily on the video footage, arguing that the Yadru officers' actions violated Rodney's constitutional rights. Defense attorneys countered with familiar arguments, though their efforts seemed less convincing the second time around. When the verdict was finally delivered in April 1993, there was a mix of relief and disappointment. Two of the officers, Lawrence Powell and Sergeant Stacy Coon, were convicted and sentenced to 30 months in prison for violating Rodney's civil rights. However, Theodore Briseno and Timothy Wind were acquitted once more. While some viewed the outcome as a small victory, others saw it as incomplete justice. After all, two of the men responsible for nearly killing Rodney walked free without consequence. For Rodney, the legal battles took a toll. Though he welcomed the convictions, he couldn't shake the feeling that true justice remained elusive. The trauma of the beating stayed with him, manifesting in physical injuries and emotional struggles. He battled substance abuse, financial difficulties, and bouts of depression, often feeling trapped by the legacy of his suffering. Friends and family rallied around him, offering support whenever possible. Still, rebuilding his life proved incredibly challenging. Despite these hardships, Rodney refused to give up hope. He understood that his story carried significance far beyond his personal experience. By sharing his journey, he hoped to inspire change and prevent others from enduring similar horrors. In interviews, he spoke candidly about forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of unity. His message resonated with many, reinforcing the idea that even in the darkest moments, humanity can find ways to heal and grow stronger together. Years later, the lessons of Rodney King's ordeal continue to shape conversations about race, policing, and accountability. Activists cite his case as a pivotal moment in the fight for justice, using it to highlight ongoing disparities within the system. Organizations like Black Lives Matter draw inspiration from his story, advocating for reforms such as increased transparency, better training for officers, and greater community involvement in shaping law enforcement policies. Though Rodney passed away in 2012, his legacy endures. His tragic experience serves as a reminder of the work still needed to achieve true equality. Today, his plea for peace, "Can we all get along?" remains etched in history, inspiring generations to strive for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Rodney King may have been an ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances, but his courage and resilience continue to leave an indelible mark on society, reminding us all of the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. The riots that erupted in Los Angeles following the acquittal of the officers involved in Rodney King's beating marked one of the darkest chapters in modern American history. For 6 days, chaos reigned supreme as anger and frustration spilled into the streets. The city became a battleground with fires consuming buildings, shattered glass littering sidewalks, and smoke choking the air. It was a scene of destruction so profound that it left an indelible mark on the nation's collective memory. South Central Los Angeles bore the brunt of the violence. Long neglected by city officials, this predominantly Black and Latino neighborhood had long been plagued by poverty, unemployment, and systemic inequality. Residents had grown weary of being ignored, their voices drowned out by those in power. When the verdict came down, it felt like the final straw, a confirmation that the justice system cared little for their lives or struggles. What began as protests quickly spiraled into something far more explosive. On the first night of the riots, crowds gathered outside the intersection of Florence and Normandy Avenues, a hub of activity in South Central. Tensions escalated when protesters attacked passing motorists, dragging them from their cars and beating them mercilessly. One of the most infamous incidents occurred when Reginald Denny, a white truck driver, stopped at a red light only to be pulled from his vehicle and brutally assaulted. News cameras captured the horrifying scene, showing Denny lying unconscious on the ground while his attackers celebrated. This moment shocked viewers nationwide, underscoring the raw fury driving the unrest. As the riots intensified, businesses large and small fell victim to looting and arson. Grocery stores, clothing shops, and even fast food restaurants were ransacked, their shelves emptied and interiors gutted by flames. Some business owners tried to protect their properties, standing guard with weapons or pleading with rioters to spare their livelihoods. Others fled, abandoning what they had worked years to build. Entire blocks transformed into smoldering ruins, leaving behind a landscape reminiscent of war zones. Law enforcement struggled to regain control. Initially caught off guard by the scale of the uprising, police forces scrambled to respond. Officers patrolled neighborhoods in armored vehicles, firing tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse crowds. However, their presence often inflamed tensions further, as many residents viewed them not as protectors, but as oppressors. The lack of trust between law enforcement and minority communities made it nearly impossible to restore order through traditional means. National Guard troops eventually arrived, adding another layer of tension to the already volatile situation. Armed with rifles and stationed at key intersections, soldiers stood ready to intervene if necessary. Helicopters buzzed overhead, casting searchlights across darkened streets. Despite these efforts, sporadic outbreaks of violence continued throughout the city. Looters darted between burning buildings carrying stolen goods under cover of darkness. Gunfire echoed through residential areas, forcing families to take shelter indoors. Amidst the chaos, acts of kindness and solidarity emerged. Neighbors banded together to defend their homes and businesses, forming human chains to prevent looters from entering. Community leaders organized cleanup efforts, encouraging residents to focus on rebuilding rather than destruction. Churches opened their doors to provide food, water, and shelter to those displaced by the riots. These gestures offered glimmers of hope in an otherwise bleak environment, reminding people that humanity could still shine through even the darkest moments. For Rodney King, watching the riots unfold was heartbreaking. He had hoped his case would lead to meaningful change, not widespread devastation. In interviews during the height of the unrest, he pleaded for calm, famously asking, Can we all get along? His words struck a chord with many, encapsulating the pain and exhaustion of a man who wanted nothing more than peace. Though Rodney understood the anger fueling the riots, he feared the cycle of violence would only perpetuate suffering without addressing the root causes of injustice. Eventually, authorities managed to quell the worst of the riots. Curfews were imposed, and additional troops were deployed to enforce them. Slowly but surely the fires died down, and the streets emptied. By the time the dust settled, 63 people had lost their lives, thousands were injured, and property damage exceeded $1 billion. Entire neighborhoods lay in ruins, their futures uncertain. Yet the scars went deeper than physical destruction. They cut straight to the heart of America's racial divide. In the aftermath, leaders from various backgrounds convened to discuss solutions. President George H.W. Bush addressed the nation, condemning the violence while acknowledging the legitimate grievances behind it. Local officials promised reforms aimed at improving relations between law enforcement and marginalized communities. Activists pushed for policy changes, including stricter oversight of police departments and investments in education, healthcare, and job creation programs. While some progress was made, much work remained unfinished. Meanwhile, Rodney King grappled with the weight of his newfound legacy. Though he welcomed any effort to address systemic issues, he couldn't escape the trauma of what he'd endured. Physically, he still carried the scars of the beating, broken bones that never fully healed and chronic pain that lingered for years. Emotionally, the burden was even heavier. Nightmares haunted him, replaying the events of that fateful night, over and over again. Friends and family rallied around him, offering support whenever possible, but rebuilding his life proved incredibly challenging. Financial troubles added another layer of difficulty. Legal fees from the trials drained his savings, leaving him struggling to make ends meet. Substance abuse became a recurring issue, partly due to the stress and anxiety stemming from his ordeal. Despite these challenges, Rodney refused to let bitterness consume him. He believed that sharing his story could help prevent similar tragedies from happening to others. In interviews, he spoke candidly about forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of unity. His message resonated with many, reinforcing the idea that even in the darkest moments, humanity can find ways to heal and grow stronger together. Years later, the lessons of Rodney King's ordeal continue to shape conversations about race, policing, and accountability. Activists cite his case as a pivotal moment in the fight for justice, using it to highlight ongoing disparities within the system. Organizations like Black Lives Matter draw inspiration from his story, advocating for reforms such as increased transparency, better training for officers, and greater community involvement in shaping law enforcement policies. Videos capturing similar acts of police brutality continue to surface, echoing the horrors witnessed in 1991. Yet progress remains slow, and systemic change feels elusive. Though Rodney passed away in 2012, his legacy endures. His tragic experience serves as a reminder of the work still needed to achieve true equality. Today, his plea for peace, "Can we all get along?" remains etched in history, inspiring generations to strive for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Rodney King may have been an ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances, but his courage and resilience continue to leave an indelible mark on society, reminding us all of the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. Rodney's story is not just one of victimization, it is also one of survival and advocacy. Even as he faced countless obstacles, he never lost sight of the bigger picture, a world where everyone is treated equally, regardless of race or background. Through his humility and determination, Rodney inspired countless individuals to join the fight for justice. His voice may no longer be heard, but his message lives on, urging future generations to keep pushing for a brighter, fairer future. In the years following the riots and the federal retrial of the officers involved in his beating, Rodney King's life remained a complex mix of struggle and resilience. Though two of the officers, Lawrence Powell and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, were convicted in the second trial and sentenced to 30 months in prison for violating his civil rights, Rodney found little solace in the verdict. For him, justice felt incomplete, hollow even. Two of the men responsible for nearly killing him walked free, while the system that allowed such brutality to occur remained largely unchanged. The legal battles had drained him emotionally, physically, and financially, leaving him to pick up the pieces of a life forever altered by trauma. Rodney's physical injuries were severe and long-lasting. He suffered multiple fractures, including broken bones in his face and skull, as well as internal damage that required extensive medical treatment. Doctors worked tirelessly to repair what they could, but some wounds never fully healed. Chronic pain became a constant companion, forcing him to rely on medication to manage daily discomfort. His body bore visible scars, a stark reminder of the night he wished he could forget. Yet it was the emotional toll that proved most challenging. Nightmares plagued him, replaying the events over and over again in vivid detail. Sleep eluded him, and when it came, it brought no rest. Flashbacks triggered panic attacks, making it difficult for him to trust others or feel safe in public spaces. Substance abuse became a recurring issue for Rodney, a coping mechanism born out of desperation. Alcohol and drugs offered temporary relief from the overwhelming anxiety and depression that consumed him. Friends and family noticed the changes in his behavior, his withdrawal from social gatherings, his reluctance to talk about his feelings, and his growing dependence on substances to numb the pain. They tried their best to intervene, staging interventions and encouraging him to seek professional help. While Rodney appreciated their efforts, he often felt trapped in a cycle he couldn't break. The more he struggled, the harder it became to imagine a future free of suffering. Financial troubles added another layer of difficulty. Legal fees from both trials wiped out whatever savings Rodney had accumulated, leaving him struggling to make ends meet. Without steady employment due to his injuries and mental health challenges, he relied on odd jobs and occasional appearances at speaking engagements to get by. At times, he even resorted to selling autographs or memorabilia tied to his infamous case. Critics accused him of profiting off tragedy, but Rodney saw these opportunities as a way to survive, while sharing his story with those willing to listen. Despite the criticism, he remained steadfast in his belief that his experience could inspire change. Despite these hardships, Rodney refused to let bitterness define him. He understood that his story carried significance far beyond his personal struggles. By speaking out, he hoped to shed light on the systemic issues plaguing law enforcement and society at large. In interviews, he emphasized themes of forgiveness, unity, and resilience. "I'm not angry," he once said. "I forgive them. I just want people to know we can all get along." These words resonated deeply, capturing the essence of a man who had endured unimaginable pain yet still believed in humanity's capacity for compassion and understanding. Rodney's advocacy extended beyond media appearances. He participated in community events, joining activists and leaders working toward reform. Together, they pushed for policies aimed at increasing police accountability, improving training programs, and fostering better relationships between law, enforcement, and marginalized communities. Rodney lent his voice to campaigns calling for greater investment in education, healthcare, and job creation initiatives in underserved neighborhoods. He believed that addressing root causes of inequality would ultimately lead to safer, stronger communities where everyone could thrive. One of Rodney's proudest moments came in 1992, when he published his memoir titled The Riot Within: My Journey from Rebellion to Redemption. Co-written with Lawrence J. Spagnola, the book provided an intimate look at his life before and after the beating, offering readers insight into his thoughts, fears, and hopes for the future. Through candid storytelling, Rodney revealed the depth of his trauma while also highlighting moments of grace and redemption. The memoir served as both a reflection on his journey and a call to action, urging readers to confront uncomfortable truths about racism and injustice. It became a bestseller, further cementing Rodney's role as a reluctant symbol of resilience. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Rodney continued to advocate for peace and reconciliation. He appeared on television shows, gave lectures at universities, and spoke at rallies organized by civil rights groups. Though he disliked being in the spotlight, he recognized the importance of using his platform to amplify voices often ignored or silenced. Activists praised his willingness to engage with difficult topics, noting how his humility and authenticity inspired others to join the fight for equality. Even as new cases of police brutality emerged, Rodney reminded audiences that progress required persistence. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he often said, "but if we keep pushing, we'll get there." Tragically, Rodney's personal struggles persisted despite his efforts to rebuild his life. On June 17, 2012, he was found dead in his swimming pool at the age of 47. Authorities ruled his death an accidental drowning, likely exacerbated by heart problems and the effects of substance abuse. News of his passing sent shockwaves through the nation, reigniting conversations about the lasting impact of his ordeal. Tributes poured in from friends, family, and strangers alike, all expressing gratitude for his courage and determination to make the world a better place. In death, Rodney King's legacy only grew stronger. His story continues to serve as a powerful reminder of the work still needed to achieve true justice and equality. Activists cite his case as a catalyst for movements like Black Lives Matter, which draw attention to ongoing disparities within the justice system. Videos capturing similar acts of police brutality continue to surface, echoing the horrors witnessed in 1991. Each incident reinforces the urgent need for reform, prompting calls for increased transparency, stricter oversight of law enforcement, agencies, and investments in community-based solutions. Today, Rodney's famous plea, "Can we all get along?" remains etched in history, inspiring generations to strive for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. His message transcends race, class, and geography, reminding us that unity is possible even in the face of division. Though Rodney may have been an ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances, his courage and resilience continue to leave an indelible mark on society. His voice may no longer be heard, but his story lives on, urging future generations to keep fighting for a brighter, fairer future. Rodney King's journey teaches us that healing takes time, effort, and collective action. It reminds us that while individual stories matter, systemic change requires sustained commitment from individuals, institutions, and governments alike. As long as disparities exist, Rodney's legacy will endure, challenging us to confront our biases, challenge oppressive systems, and build bridges across divides. His tragic experience serves as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity has the power to rise above adversity and create meaningful change. Rodney King's death in 2012 marked the end of a life filled with pain, resilience, and an unwavering belief in humanity's potential for good. Yet, his legacy did not fade with him. Instead, it grew stronger, becoming a cornerstone of modern conversations about race, justice, and equality. His story serves as both a reminder of the injustices that persist in society and a call to action for those committed to creating a better future. Through his struggles and advocacy, Rodney King left behind a blueprint for how individuals can confront adversity while inspiring collective progress. In the years following his passing, the world continued to grapple with many of the same issues that defined Rodney's ordeal. Police brutality remained a pressing concern, with videos capturing violent encounters between officers and unarmed citizens sparking outrage worldwide. Each incident reignited debates about accountability, transparency, and systemic racism within law enforcement. For many activists, Rodney's case served as a foundation upon which they built their arguments. His name became synonymous with the fight against injustice, invoked during protests, speeches, and campaigns aimed at reforming policing practices. The rise of movements like Black Lives Matter, BLM, further cemented Rodney's place in history. Founded in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the killing of Trayvon Martin, BLM quickly gained momentum, drawing attention to countless cases of racial profiling, excessive force, and unequal treatment under the law. Activists within the movement often referenced Rodney's beating and the subsequent riots as pivotal moments that exposed deep-rooted inequalities in American society. By connecting past injustices to present-day struggles, they highlighted the urgent need for change. One of the most significant achievements inspired by Rodney's legacy came in 2020, when the murder of George Floyd, a black man killed by a Minneapolis police officer, sparked global protests. Millions took to the streets demanding justice not only for Floyd, but for all victims of police violence. The sheer scale of the demonstrations reflected a growing awareness of systemic racism and its devastating impact on marginalized communities. Protesters carried signs bearing slogans like "No Justice, No Peace," and chanted phrases reminiscent of Rodney's plea, "Can we all get along?" These echoes underscored the enduring relevance of his message, proving that his words still resonate deeply with people around the world. Legislative efforts also emerged in response to these calls for reform. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at increasing police accountability, such as banning chokeholds, requiring body cameras, and establishing independent oversight boards to investigate misconduct. Some cities reallocated portions of their police budgets to fund social services, education, and mental health programs, recognizing that addressing root causes of crime could lead to safer communities. While critics argued that these measures didn't go far enough, supporters viewed them as important first steps toward dismantling oppressive systems. Education played a crucial role in keeping Rodney's memory alive. Schools began incorporating lessons about his case into curricula, teaching students about the historical context of racial injustice and the importance of civic engagement. Documentaries, books, and museum exhibits explored his story in depth, ensuring that younger generations understood its significance. For many, learning about Rodney's experience fostered empathy and encouraged critical thinking about the role of power, privilege, and prejudice in shaping societal structures. Artists and creators also contributed to preserving Rodney's legacy. Musicians wrote songs honoring his courage. Filmmakers produced documentaries examining the events surrounding his beating, and visual artists created murals depicting his face alongside messages of hope and unity. These works transformed Rodney from a tragic figure into a symbol of resistance, reminding viewers that art has the power to inspire change and challenge the status quo. Despite these advancements, challenges remain. Systemic racism continues to manifest in various forms, from discriminatory hiring practices to disparities in healthcare access. Police brutality persists, with new cases emerging regularly. Critics argue that reforms implemented thus far are insufficient, calling for more radical changes to address underlying inequities. Others point out that progress is uneven, with some regions making strides while others lag behind. These ongoing struggles highlight the complexity of dismantling deeply entrenched systems of oppression. Yet Rodney King's story offers a glimmer of hope amid these difficulties. It reminds us that even in the darkest moments, individual acts of courage can spark widespread transformation. Rodney may have been reluctant to embrace his role as a symbol of resilience, but his humility and determination inspired countless others to join the fight for justice. His willingness to forgive despite enduring unimaginable suffering demonstrated the power of compassion and understanding in bridging divides. Today, Rodney's famous plea, "Can we all get along?" continues to resonate across generations. It challenges us to confront our biases, listen to marginalized voices, and work together toward a more equitable society. Whether spoken at rallies, printed on protest signs, or shared on social media, these words serve as a rallying cry for unity and peace. They remind us that true progress requires not only policy changes, but also shifts in mindset and behavior. Rodney's journey also teaches us the importance of perseverance. Though he faced immense challenges throughout his life, he never gave up on the belief that things could improve. He used his platform to advocate for change, knowing that his voice mattered even if it wasn't always heard. His example encourages us to speak out against injustice, no matter how daunting the task may seem. After all, every small effort contributes to the larger movement for equality. As we reflect on Rodney King's life and legacy, we must acknowledge both the progress made and the work still ahead. While laws and policies can create frameworks for fairness, lasting change depends on individuals committing to act with kindness, empathy, and integrity. We must hold ourselves accountable, challenging oppressive systems wherever they exist, and supporting initiatives that uplift marginalized communities. Only then can we honor Rodney's memory and fulfill the promise of a brighter future. In the end, Rodney King was more than just a victim of police brutality. He was a human being who endured unimaginable hardship yet chose to believe in humanity's capacity for growth. His story is one of tragedy, yes, but also of hope, resilience, and redemption. It reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, we have the power to make a difference. As long as disparities persist, Rodney's legacy will endure, urging us to keep pushing forward until everyone is treated with dignity and respect. His voice may be silent now, but his message lives on, inspiring generations to strive for a world where love triumphs over hate and justice prevails for all.